So, something to be aware of. I mean, nothing flew out while we were moving it or anything, but sure did when I started heating it up. This engine, in my mind, was beyond, I wasn't going to do anything with it. So the reason I cut it in half is because I'm going to use the cast iron to patch other projects that I have. So that's why it's cut in half, and I didn't really care much about it. The head came off, but the studs are still stuck in it, so those can be punched out. The valves are stuck, and what I would do on this, I brought basically a sampling of what's in my arsenal of for penetrating oils. If you ask me what works the best, the last thing I used, because I use everything. This product here by Loctite with the penetrating, I used to be able to get it at McGuire, but they quit selling it. I like it because it has good penetrating and low flame. A lot of these products, you soaked it down and as soon as you hit it with a torch, it's on fire. This takes a little bit more heat before it flames up. What I'll do, like with a head like this, is I'll stick it in a tub and I'll just spray it. Because it's dry, you want to get it wet. I'll either soak it, kerosene, diesel, or I'll just walk by and spray it with this stuff on a daily basis for probably a month. After that, I would, if they don't move with a little tapping, I'll build a fire in a barbecue, cover that entire with briquettes, and just cook it and then let it cool down slowly, and then start oiling again, and then the valves will probably come out. On the cylinder and the piston, I wanted to see how stuck it was, so Tim and I stood it up on end, and my plate wasn't big enough, and we hit it a half dozen times with a 5-pound sledge, and it's pretty well stuck, except for the hole in the piston now. There again, this class is on what you shouldn't do also. The disc that I used wasn't big enough, the same diameter as the piston. It was smaller. So if you're going to do that, you want to make sure your disc is the outside diameter of the piston, so you're not putting all that force inside. Otherwise you end up with a hole in the center.
I even machine a relief inside of the center. So when you hit that thing, it's only pushing it out above the rings. Because I put a plate in there, a 1/2-inch thick, that's concave, and you can beat on it all you want. It's not going to pound the center out of the piston. And I've done some that were absolutely insane to get out.
Now, this one I didn't put any lube on it or anything. I just wanted to see how tight it was, and it was pretty tight.
Still is.
I just want to share an experience. I did all of the above, and it was still stuck. In one of our classes, we had a stuck class many years ago, and a gentleman, older than I am right now, I think, walked up and says, "Oh, that's simple." And you talked about the briquettes. He said, you fire up a batch of briquettes, put them in a hopper, put a little fan on there, and let them burn all the way down. I tapped that piston out at that point because it just grew it enough.
Yeah.
It just let go. It didn't damage anything.
Also,
You can do a lot of damage trying to force things out when they're not ready to go. And sometimes just heating them up and putting briquettes in there is a nice even heat, expands everything real nicely, and then it just came apart. Didn't mess anything up.
well, I had a friend that had a stuck piston. He warmed it all up, stood it up on end, shot dry ice inside of it, and he said he could almost pull it out by hand. Because it was hot out here and he cooled that piston completely off in a hurry. That broke the rust adhesion, if you will, and he got it out that way.
I've read articles on where guys have taken Zerk fittings and sealed the valve, made sure the valves were closed, and pumped it full of grease to blow out a piston. but then once the piston blows out, you've got a mess.
I did that when my very first engine stuck. I had it in a 20-ton press with torches on the cylinder, and I could not move the piston. Redid the head, put it all together, put a grease fitting in it, took it over to the lube rack. Lube racks have 30,000 pounds of pressure in their grease guns. And I filled the cylinder full of transmission fluid, did that thing on in and got that gun going. Beep, 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 boom! And that piston moved like 3/8 of an inch, but it didn't leak past it. I got that piston almost all the way out, but like he says, I should have had it in a worse tub. It was a mess.
I had a friend engine, 5-horse friend, that's headless, and the piston was stuck in it. There's a plug in the end, so I managed to get the plug out, adapted it down to an air fitting, and then I put automatic transmission fluid in the cylinder, and then about 80 pounds of PSI of air, and just let it sit with the air. Did that for a week, and then I started to see the transmission fluid seeping around the back of the piston. Headless, you can't get in there to beat on it, so I took a piece of channel about 4 feet long, made a bracket to fit on the back of the rod with an eye bolt, and hooked a come-along to it on this channel and that. I'd go out there with the come-along, get one click, put the air to it, let it sit. Took the weed burner, heat around the cylinder, a couple days later, get another click. I had so much tension on that come-along that I was pulling the cable through the wrap on it. And then one day I reefed on it and it popped. I figured I either got it to move or I pulled the back of the piston off. Couldn't get it to move anymore, took everything off, tapped it forward, and then just started working it back. It came out, cylinder was good, I honed it, got the rings unstuck, put it back in, and ran the engine. So, stuck is a relative term. It just patience. That was just two of us playing with it and seeing what we could do with a sledgehammer.
I have several Olds engines, and they're a blind cylinder. In the forward, well, in the outside end of the piston, in the head of the piston, there's a chamber that's bigger than the bore. If you slide that piston in too far, the ring pops out.
Oh boy.
There you are. No way. So Clyde did it once and I did it once. I got mine out without breaking anything. Clyde pulled the top off the piston, run a chain around the piston pin, got a hydraulic jack mounted up on there and started jacking on it and pulled the top off the piston. Well, then he could get down in there and get the ring off because it broke right in the area of the ring. He got the ring out, got the top out, welded it all back together, and it's a running engine. But you have to be very careful on a blind cylinder. One of the engines I'm working on now, I don't remember what it is, was the Fuller & Johnson. At the head of the cylinder, there's a little lug sticking out, so you can't do that. But it's a blind cylinder also.
Also, wax is don't use candle wax, whatever you do. Because the candle wax has perfumes and smokes and everything, so when you go to use it, all you do is fill your shop full of smoke.
Stinky stuff.
Yeah. This is wax that I got from Wes that they use on snowboards. What I do, if I have a nut or a bolt that I can't get loose, you heat it up, put the wax on it, the wax will seep down into the threads and act as a lubricant. And 9 out of 10 times you'll be able to unscrew it.
Especially if you can wiggle that bolt in the hole but you can't get it to unscrew, or you've got an easy out stuck in a hole and you can wiggle it, unscrew them, just warm it up, and you can't get real warm because that stuff will just disappear. But you touch that on there, and as that melts, it just wicks down in that crack, and you can unscrew them bolts. It's amazing. The problem with it is, you gotta sandblast it then to get that wax off of that finish. You can't paint over what you've just heated with the wax on it. You really gotta clean it good.
Now, if you've been soaking a part, say you've been soaking this head for a long time, and you start putting heat to it, you look around like on a bolt or a pipe fitting or something like that, you watch it. If you put heat on it, it'll start bubbling up rust. And that's pulling the rust out of the threads or whatever, and then you know you're getting penetrating oil back down in where that rust is bubbling out. It might take half dozen times of heating something up, oiling it, letting it cool down. Same thing, heat, cool.
Do you guys use beeswax? Have you tried beeswax?
I haven't tried beeswax because I have cases of this snowboard wax.
And I've got a drawer full, and that's, I think I've used one stick so far.
Is that the door price for today?
No.
It could be, if you guys want some, I will bring some out.
Sorry.
That's my private reserve.
Right. Do you know where you got this?
Yeah,
Because I can't buy it anywhere anymore.
one of our chemical reps at the time was a Zep
Yeah,
for the car wash. And I
okay.
go, what do you have in the way of degreaser? So he gave me a couple of samples.
This is Zep Reserve. If you take a little squirt of this and smell it, it has a distinct odor. Several of the different penetrating oils, the ones that work, have that same odor. And what it is some sort of a releasing agent, or an acid, if you will. I took 1 can of this and a few tools down on a trip. We unscrewed every single bolt on the project. We were taking a 75 horse Volt engine off of a combine. Went out, squirted this stuff on it, and if you watch, when you start working it, the rust just kind of turns to a paste, like a toothpaste, a mush. And so I was a firm believer in Zep Reserve. Now it comes with some kind of a Teflon in it. I don't think it's nearly as good a product. They were trying to copy, I think, WD-40. But this is an excellent product. You could buy it, at that time, you could buy it in a gallon can, put it in your own spray bottle. Not cheap.
Now, years ago, my son needed a science project for school. So I go, why don't you try penetrating oils? You know, put one, see how far it would rise. So we set it up with 12 identical rods, rusty rods, set vertically, one at room temperature, one under a heat lamp. After a week, the liquid wrench, under normal temperature, raised about 10 inches on a steel rod. So it wasn't wood wicking up, it was actually wicking up vertically on a steel rusty rod. The liquid wrench at room temperature. If you heated it, it only did half the distance. So sometimes heat is detrimental, sometimes it's beneficial. This product is a product that Harvey had, and at the time when he passed, there was cases back there and they got divvied up. It's a military grade penetrating oil, which you can't buy, but you put a drop on a rusty hood and within an hour or two you've got an oil spot 4 to 6 inches in diameter. So it creeps real well. What I do is I take some of this, the liquid wrench, and ATF, and some liquid WD-40, and I mix it up in an oil can, and that's what I use for my initial wet down of a stuck project, to just get it soaking in and get it broke loose.
You ever tried
This one?
ATF and acetone?
I haven't.
Or
There's
50-50 mix. I've used it a lot you have to, whatever container you put it in, you gotta shake it up really good to separate. And I do it, put it in cylinders, and basically, you gotta give it, you know, sometimes a month.
Yeah, I mean, stuck things are not, they didn't get stuck overnight.
Yeah.
You're not gonna unstick them overnight. Now, I work in the car wash industry, and it's like working on the Titanic. The chemicals, the rust, the water, and my problem is I've gotta get it unstuck and put back together so they can operate the next day. So there's a lot of,
I just wanna run something quick by you. You look at this can, it's an old can, but it has this screw-on metal lid. If you see these cans, brake fluid cans are another item. That's the perfect cap and part to put on a gas tank when you're building gas tanks. Very hard to find when you want one, so if you see an old can like that, especially at a swap meet or something for a couple bucks, and there's your cap and your spout for building your next fuel tank. And like I said, you can never find one when you want one, so you gotta grab them when you see them.
so that's kind of my technique on unsticking stuff. I mean, if I've got a part that's like that head, the first thing I would do is I've got a caustic soda vat. I would soak it in the caustic soda, and that gets rid of all the grime and the dirt. So that way you're not fighting the grease and the oil. You want to get down to the bare metal to get it unstuck. It'll flash rust after that, but then if the next thing could use is electrolysis. I've used electrolysis to unstick rings, pistons, or the inside of a hopper was all rusty in that. So I set it up reverse and put the electrodes inside the hopper to break down all the rust inside the hopper. There's a bunch of techniques.
I'm fortunate that I have a big barrel stove in my shop. If I couldn't get that head apart, I just built a big fire, put it in the stove to keep the fire going for the day, and the next morning I pull the cylinder head out, and it's as apt as not to be able to move the valves. It'll destroy the springs, but they're usually gone anyway. So I have a valve off of a 32 horse Fairbanks. The cage is that big, and I can't hardly lift it. Had an inch stem on the valve, and it was stuck solid. So I have this handout of a boiler that's like a bird bath. I set it up on top of a barrel and built a big fire in it, put that cage in there, and stacked it all up with wood. We roasted our hot dogs and filled around there for most of the day. The next morning, I went out there and that valve was free in that hole. So if you can build a fire and control it, and are able to let it cool down, that will loosen a lot of stuff. And our old friend Clyde Sherman, he was a metallurgist, if you will, much as Alan Sherman is. He said that was all red once. It ain't gonna hurt it to be red again. Just as long as you don't overdo it.
Yeah.